Welcome back. It's Monday, which means it's time for a power rankings video looking at the week that was around the Ontario Hockey League. And what's also kind of crazy to think about, we're now 3/4 of the way through the 2023-24 OHL regular season. So that's 5 more weeks until the postseason. It's crazy how fast time flies. So I'll be doing a video looking at what to expect in these coming weeks as we prepare for the postseason. But this one meant to look at where we're at right now when it comes to the Ontario Hockey League picture. So we're going to start things off at number 20. No change from last week. It's the Peterborough Petes. They went 0-3 last week. That included an 11-1 loss on the road against the Brantford Bulldogs. The Peterborough Petes, they're now 7 points out of the final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. I know the playoffs seem unlikely right now, but you know these players, they're still going to be competitive. They're not packing it in yet. But for the Peterborough Petes, it's an uphill climb right now. But on the bright side, Liam Stuchka, he's now 5th in save percentage in the OHL at .904. Wins, yes, they've been hard to come by, but Stuchka keeps them in each game. He's facing a ton of shots. He actually faced 56 shots in the loss to the Mississauga Steelheads last week. So don't tell him that the playoffs are out of the equation. He's trying to keep getting wins for this Peterborough Petes team that's pretty young. And I have to admit, this team, expect them in 2 years to be one of the more competitive teams in the Ontario Hockey League. The Petes, they do play 3 games this week, starting at home Thursday against Guelph. Then they travel to Kingston before coming back home on Family Day to take on the Kitchener Rangers. At number 19, the Niagara Ice Dogs, they fell 2 positions this week. It was a rough road trip for Niagara through Northern Ontario. They went 0-3. They were outscored 20-3 in those 3 losses, and that included a 12-1 loss in North Bay. Niagara, they've been playing shorthanded of late. They did sign 3 players, though, going into the weekend. Darcy DeWatcher, Eric He, and Rafik Danov. DeWatcher and He, they recorded their first OHL points in the loss to North Bay. So obviously for Eric He, he's the brother of Kevin He. So the He brothers united there in Niagara. But for the Ice Dogs, it was a weekend that they're going to want to forget. The Ice Dogs, they do have 4 games this week, starting in Erie before hosting Oshawa. Then they are in Brantford, and then they go to Oshawa for Family Day. At number 18, the Guelph Storm. They fell 4 spots. The Guelph Storm, they only played 2 games last week. They went 0-1-1. Their losing streak, though, it's now at 6 games. This Guelph Storm team, they only have 2 wins over their last 10 games. It's been pretty tough going with the Guelph Storm. This is the lowest they've been all season in the power rankings. They continue to have problems finding the back of the net. They only have 149 goals for. Only the Peterborough Petes have fewer at 136. So the offense, it continues to sputter. And right now, just looking at where they are in the standings, they're benefiting from that great start to the year when they got points early on in the season. Because if it wasn't for that, this team might be being a team on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoff picture. They're right now 5th in the Western Conference, 9 points ahead of the Flint Firebirds at the time of recording. So for the Guelph Storm, they got 4 games this week. They need to turn things around. It starts tomorrow night in Kitchener at the Odd before taking on Peterborough Thursday, and then they host Erie and Sudbury. So for the Guelph Storm, that's a team that desperately needs a win to turn things around. At number 17, we have the Barrie Colts. They're up 1 position. The Colts slowly rebounding in the power rankings after going 2-1 last week. Wins over the Erie Otters and the Kingston Frontenacs. The Barrie Colts, they have earned points in 5 of their last 6 games, and they've won 4 in a row on home ice. When playing at the Saddleland Arena, the Barrie Colts are a much different team than what you see on the road, although their road game has improved significantly. The Colts, they've been getting solid goaltending as well from Ben West and Sam Hillebrand. Hillebrand right now, he's 4th in save percentage in the OHL at .904. So the Barrie Colts, a team that's much improved from what we saw a few weeks ago. It almost seems as though the trade deadline, this team has built chemistry. I really love the play of Thomas Stewart in the back end. He's been a solid pickup from the Oshawa Generals, and they're continuing to look up in the Eastern Conference standings. Right now, 8th, but they're only 4 points back of the Kingston Frontenacs, who sit 7th. It is a tough schedule, though, this week for the Barrie Colts. They host the Saginaw Spirit Thursday, They take on Ottawa Saturday before traveling to Kingston for a Family Day matchup. At number 16, it's the Kingston Frontenacs. No change for them from last week. The inconsistent play continues for the Frontenacs. They went 2-2 last week, starting with two big wins against Oshawa and Kitchener, and then they lost both their games on the road in Barrie and North Bay. For the Kingston Frontenacs, they've been getting some great play from Jacques Dubois, who they picked up from Peterborough Petes at the trade deadline. He got 2 goals in that game in Barrie as he was trying to get the Frontenacs back in it. They were down 4-0, but they chipped away at that lead and then just fell short late as Ben West was stellar in that hockey game. For Dubois, 3 goals, 2 assists, good for 5 points in that 4 games last week. So Dubois really trying to get the Frontenacs to turn things around and string some wins together. For Kingston, it's another busy week for them. They're in Ottawa Wednesday night. They host Peterborough, visit Mississauga, and then, of course, they host the Barrie Colts on Family Day. At number 15, it's the Windsor Spitfires. No change for them. The playoffs, they may seem out of reach for Windsor, but that doesn't mean they're not going to put up a fight. They went 2-1 last week. They had a good week. Wins against Owen Sound and Erie. Noah Morneau. He had a great week for Windsor, putting up 3 goals, 2 assists, good for 5 points in 3 games of work. Morneau, he's only in his 2nd season in the Ontario Hockey League, and he's showing some good upside for this Windsor Spitfires team as they're looking to the future. And I think Morneau will definitely be a key piece to that as this team moves forward. For Windsor, they travel to they host Brantford on Wednesday night before going to Flint, and then they host the Sioux and travel to London for Family Day. At number 14, we have the Erie Otters. They fell 4 spots this week. If you're an Erie Otters fan, you probably have some concerns as they went 0-4. Erie, 3 wins over their last 10 games, and for a team that wants to snap that playoff drought, they need to turn things around soon, just like the Guelph Storm. Erie, they've been having a relatively good season. They've been hovering in the middle of the pack all year, but now suddenly, of course, Ben Goudreau out due to an injury, and this team just slipping a little bit. Now, the Otters, they're 7th in the Western Conference right now, 4 points ahead of Flint, who are in 9th. The Firebirds, they also have 1 game in hand on the Otters. So tough spot right now for Erie as they try to turn things around. They do have another busy week. The Erie Otters host Niagara Wednesday, visit Guelph, host Oshawa, and then they go to Brantford for Family Day. So it's another tough week ahead for the Erie Otters. At number 13, the Sarnia Sting, they're up 6 spots. The Sting, they are the biggest risers in the power ranking this week. Their week didn't get off to a good start with a 6-2 loss in Owen Sound, but then they won 2 in a row against Erie and Guelph. The win against the Storm was in overtime. Easton Wainwright, he was the hero in that game. Now, this is a Sarnia Sting team that's very young, and a lot of people kind of counted Sarnia out at the trade deadline. They moved on from Villemanis and the LeBlanc twins as they sent them to North Bay, and this team looks to be building for the future. But don't tell them that because they're 6-3-1 over their last 10 games. They're holding on to that final playoff spot in the Western Conference, 1 point ahead of the Flint Firebirds. So maybe this run won't last long, but still, this is great experience for this team that many people were counting out. So the Sting, they do play a crucial home-and-home this weekend against the Flint Firebirds. That could decide playoff positioning at the bottom of the Western Conference. And then they host the Sioux Greyhounds on Family Day. So don't count out the Sarnia Sting. At number 12, the Kitchener Rangers. They fell another 4 spots. One of the biggest questions right now in the OHL, what's going on in Kitchener? The Rangers, they went 0-2 on their trip through Kingston and Ottawa, and now they only have 2 wins in their last 10 games. They have fallen out of the race for top spot in the Midwest Division. They're right now 15 points behind the London Knights, and this team exceeding all expectations this year. They were holding on to top spot in the Ontario Hockey League. They had top scorers with Rakoff and Brustevich and Misljevic, but this team has really cooled off. I know there's been injuries, travel, the schedule. You can come up with excuses all you want, but they're not getting the results, and that's the big problem right now for the Kitchener Rangers. And it seems as though the turning point for the Rangers may have been that home-and-home series against the London Knights. That was back on January 19th and 20th, where they were outscored 14-5. And it just, maybe their confidence was shaken up, or it's a chemistry issue after the trade deadline. But Something is really off right now with this Kitchener Rangers team. They've got the talent, but something's just not clicking. So we'll have to wait and see. Can they turn it around? They do host the Guelph Storm, and then they play against Mississauga before taking on Sudbury this week, before going to Peterborough on Family Day. At number 11, the Flint Firebirds up another 2 positions. I know this is surprising many Firebird fans that I have Flint this high in the power rankings, but they're a team fighting for their playoff lives, and they are making things very interesting in the West. They went 2-1 last week, big wins over Oshawa and Brantford, 2 teams that are leading the East Division. So this is a team that they're not just beating teams that they should. These are teams that you kind of figured they'd struggle against, but they won those convincingly. Oliver Peer, solid week for the Firebirds. He had 2 goals, 3 assists, good for 5 points in the 3 games. And Oliver Peer, he's fit in quite nicely since coming over in that trade from Windsor. He's got 8 goals, 8 assists, good for 16 points in 12 games. He will be a big factor if the Flint Firebirds are going to make the playoffs. And as I mentioned earlier, they're 1 point out behind Sarnia for that final playoff spot. They do have a home and home, which is going to be crucial against that Sarnia Sting team before they host Windsor. So Flint, yeah, they might be a little high in the power rankings, but this is a team that can stun some people. So we'll have to wait and see what the Flint Firebirds are capable of. At number 10, the Owen Sound Attack. They're up 1 position. It was another up and down week for Owen Sound, 1-1-1. They started with that win against Sarnia, forced overtime against Saginaw, and then lost to Windsor. So just Owen Sound continues to be average at best, and that's why you find them right now in the middle of the power rankings. Carter George, though, first overall with a .914 save percentage, and they need consistency in front of George. And that just seems to be where the problem is, not getting the full 60 minutes, or maybe they just get a little too comfortable and give up the leads. I don't know what exactly it is with the Owen Sound Attack, but they do have some tough games coming up. They host the Oshawa Generals tomorrow night before visiting Brantford, so 2 top teams in the East Division, before hosting London, who are the first place team in the OHL, and then go to Mississauga for Family Day. So a very tough week ahead for the Owen Sound Attack. At number 9, the Mississauga Steelheads. They are up 3 positions. I think we're starting to see the Steelheads team that was at the top of the standings at the start of the regular season. They went 2-0-1 last week, and the game against the Sudbury Wolves last night was just insane as they lost 8-7 in overtime. That was a game that went back and forth, and we kind of saw that on Friday night when the Barrie Colts were in Mississauga. I was at that game, and I was just impressed with the speed and just the capabilities that the offense has of putting pucks on net. So this is a Mississauga team that looks like they're turning things around. Angus McDonnell, Lucas Camiris, they both had 2 goals and an assist in the game against Sudbury. And McDonnell, he's really picked things up recently. 5 points over his last 2 games. So if Mississauga is going to be competitive, they're going to need Angus McDonnell, Porter Martone, Camiris, just to continue to pick things up offensively. Also, Luke Misa, he's been a little quieter than what we're used to. And then you've got Van Volsen. So they have the depth. We just need to see if they can click. The Steelheads, they are in Kitchener Friday, and then they host Kingston and Owen Sound. At number 8, it's the Ottawa 67s. They're up 1 position this week. The 67s, they're turning things around. They went 2-0 last week and have earned points in 9 consecutive games. And right now, 4 points behind Brantford for first place in the East Division with 2 games in hand. So things looking up for Ottawa. Will Giroir, he had goals in back-to-back games last week for Ottawa, as we're just seeing the goal scoring now throughout the lineup. They're not just relying on Luca Pinelli, who is still a solid goal scorer, but if you can get goals outside of Pinelli in that line, then you're looking at a good sign here for the Ottawa 67s. Ottawa, they do host Kingston Wednesday before traveling to North Bay and Barrie, and then they host the Battalion on Family Day. At number 7, we have the Brantford Bulldogs. They fell 1 position this week. Brantford went 2-1 with those wins coming against Guelph and Peterborough, who've been struggling, but they do need those wins. You need to win those games to try and hold on to top spot in that East Division. Right now, the East is wide open. Brantford, Oshawa, Ottawa, all competing for top spot in the division. Right now, the Bulldogs 3 points ahead of Oshawa and 4 ahead of Ottawa, and it's just going to be a fun race over these next 5 weeks. I've seen what transpires in that East Division. And for Brantford, they do travel to Windsor Wednesday night. They host Owen Sound, travel to Niagara, and then host Erie on Family Day. At number 6, it's the North Bay Battalion, down one spot. The Battalion, they had a huge week. They went 2-0 and outscored their opponents 21-1. And you're probably wondering, okay, so if they had such a great week, why did they drop? It's just because they were passed. There was a team ahead of them that had a really good week as well. Got ahead of North Bay, and I think this is just a minor hiccup right now in the power rankings. North Bay, they're a top 5 team, I strongly believe, and they should probably replace one of those teams ahead of them by next week. This team, North Bay, I feel they have a really strong chance of finishing first in the Central Division, and I could see them coming out of the Eastern Conference as East champions. This North Bay team is that deep. However, they're still missing Ty Nelson due to injury. Sounds like he's been skating, which is good news, but with a head injury, you really don't want to rush that. So it's good to take time with that because Ty Nelson's going to be huge come playoff time if they're going to want to go on that deep run. As for Anthony Romani, he now leads the league in points with 84. He's also first with 44 goals. And you can't forget Dalen Wakely. He's fourth in points with 76. So North Bay, right now, they are getting things done. Even Vilmanis had a four-goal game the other night. So they're getting contributions throughout the lineup. And with DiVincentis playing better, and you're also getting Mike McIver, who had his first career shutout last night against Kingston, things are definitely looking up for this North Bay squad. This weekend, though, is going to be a huge test for them. They host Ottawa Friday, they host Saginaw Sunday, and then they play in Ottawa for Family Day. So that's some tough competition ahead for the North Bay Battalion. At number 5, the Oshawa Generals. They fell 2 spots this week. I know I've been pumping the tires of Oshawa these last few weeks, but with the news of Connor Lockhart and the suspension, he's out indefinitely, and then the police investigation, it kind of looks as though the Oshawa Generals as a team have kind of been rattled. They went 0-2-1 last week, and the game against London, though, they looked great in that first half. They were up 3-0 going into the third period, but then gave up 3 goals in the third, and the Knights ended up winning in overtime. So it's really it's hard to tell which direction this Oshawa team is going to go. There's going to be a lot of soul searching, I think, in that dressing room. These players are going to want to dig deep, try and turn things around, and try to block out the noise with the Connor Lockhart situation. I'm sure we'll hear something in the coming weeks as to what's happening with that situation. There's no official update as to if there's going to be charges or whatnot with Connor Lockhart, but out on the ice, this team is going to want to focus on the games at hand. For Oshawa, they do travel to Owen Sound, Niagara, and Erie before coming back home to take on the Niagara Ice Dogs on Family Day. At number 4, it's the Sioux Greyhounds. No change for them. With Oshawa dropping out of the top 3, I kind of thought the Greyhounds would take their spot, but they didn't have a great week either. The Sioux, they went 1-2, losses against Sudbury and Saginaw, and they only beat the Niagara Ice Dogs by a score of 2-1. Owen Flores stole that game for Niagara. The Greyhounds, they play at home Wednesday against Sudbury before they hit the road, and they face the London Knights, Windsor Spitfires, and Sarnia Stings. So this is a Sioux team that's still pretty strong. They've got a great offense, and they're the last team to beat the London Knights in regulation. That was back in December. So if anyone, I guess, is going to beat the London Knights, why not the Sioux Greyhounds? That game, of course, will be at Budweiser Gardens this weekend. At number 3, the Sudbury Wolves. They shot up 4 positions this week. It was a great week for Sudbury. They went 3-0, wins over Sault Ste. Marie, Niagara, and Mississauga. The Wolves, they have an outstanding offense. They have no problems putting goals in the net. But they also can't keep the puck out of the net either. That is the downfall right now. Their Achilles heel, so to speak. They needed to win 8-7 in overtime against Mississauga yesterday, which is a concern because when it's the playoffs, you can't always keep outscoring your problems, or at least you shouldn't be able to. So I'm sure for Ken McKenzie and the coaching staff, trying to figure out what it is that needs to be addressed to stop seeing all these pucks going into the back of the net. Does it come to goaltending? Does it come to the defense, the systems? Are the forwards coming back to help out? What is it? Because this offense is lethal. When they get the puck in the offensive zone, they can play keep away all they want. They can get all the shots, but as soon as they turn it over or the opposition can get it through the neutral zone, it just seems as though the Sudbury Wolves are vulnerable. So outside of that, they're still number 3 in the power rankings because they're getting the points, they're getting the wins. They're starting to get some separation in the Eastern Conference standings, which is something we haven't seen all season. So we'll see if they can continue that. David Goyette, he's also second in points with 84, fourth in goals with 31. So once the defensive systems are figured out, this is a Sudbury Wolves team that should be lethal and looking for a long run in the playoffs. So for the Sudbury Wolves, they do travel to Sault Ste. Marie Wednesday night. They're going to host Saginaw Friday. That game's going to be huge at the Sudbury Community Arena. And then they travel to Kitchener and Guelph to wrap up the weekend. At number 2, the Saginaw Spirit. No change for them. It was another great week for Saginaw. They went 3-0, although they needed overtime in the win against the Owen Sound attack, where Zane Parekh was the overtime hero. Speaking of Parekh, he is now sitting at 25 goals, which is outstanding for a defenseman. Of course, Zane Parekh, one of the NHL draft eligible players for this June's draft. He's now got 74 points, which puts him 5th overall in OHL scoring. He's also riding a 5-game point streak, so look out for Zane Parekh. The Spirit, they're on the road this week, stopped in Barrie, Sudbury, and North Bay. And those games against the Wolves and the Battalion, those are going to be a big test for the Saginaw Spirit team. So that leaves us with no change at number 1. Again, the London Knights. For the 6th week in a row, London, they are the top team in the OHL Power Rankings on my channel. They now have points in 23 consecutive games. That is unreal. They went 3-0 last week, including a come-from-behind win in overtime against the Oshawa Generals, where Easton Cowan was the hero. With how well London has been playing, they now have a 15-point lead over Kitchener for first in the Midwest. And if my math is correct, the Knights could clinch a playoff spot this weekend with 3 wins. They host the Sioux Friday night before going to Owen Sound, and then they host the Windsor Spitfires for Family Day. So the London Knights on the verge of clinching a playoff spot. They would be the first team to do so in the Ontario Hockey League. And I don't know what can stop these London Knights. They've been playing some incredible hockey. They can play different styles, and they can play a physical game. They can play in the corners. They can come back if they find themselves behind. So Dale Hunter and the coaching staff doing a great job with this London Knights team, and we'll see how long this point streak can go for. So those are the power rankings for this week, and next weekend is Family Day, so there will be no power rankings on the Monday. I will release the power rankings on the Tuesday after the long weekend, so stay tuned for that. And also, because we've now reached 3/4 of the way through the regular season, I'll be posting a video looking at the standings and how things are shaping up as we make that final push to the postseason. So thank you very much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and also put down your comments down below, your thoughts on the week that was, your thoughts on the power rankings, and what team is surprising you right now. Love to see the interaction, and I appreciate all your support as this channel continues to grow, and we'll talk to you again soon.